The forest was older than memory, its skeletal trees rising into a fog-choked sky that swallowed both light and sound. The alien recruits trudged through the frozen undergrowth, boots, claws, and crystalline feet crunching against the crust of ice. The air stung like glass shards, each breath cutting down the throat. Frost clung to their polished armor and advanced respirators, a world away from the warm academies where they had once boasted of their strength and cleverness. They were a mixed squad, an assembly of the Galactic Federation's disparate species. Velthur, the tall insectoid, marched with antennae twitching at every echo, mandibles clicking with nervous energy. Beside it, the Dracari shifted restlessly, scales glittering like dull bronze beneath frost. The crystalline twins from Vetra, their silicon bodies resonating faintly, emitted low pulses that shivered through the cold air. Each carried gleaming plasma rifles, humming with the energy of bottled stars. Captain Rin led them with steady resolve. His angular frame, compound eyes, and scarred mandibles spoke of campaigns across barren moons and desert wastes. His orders came clipped, precise, and unquestionable. Stay alert. The Dominion patrols are cleverer than they look. This forest holds more than mist. The recruits gave grudging acknowledgments, their voices thick with bravado, even as nerves coiled beneath their words. And trailing among them was the oddity, the human. He moved differently, slow yet deliberate, as though every step was calculated to disturb nothing. His armor was not polished, not reinforced. Instead, he wore a tattered weave of cloth, netting, and shredded fabric that merged into the frost and branches until he looked less like a soldier and more like a shadow pretending to walk upright. Across his back rested no plasma cannon nor particle repeater, but a long, weathered rifle of wood and steel. Its bolt gleamed faintly when he checked it, pulling it back with a metallic click. A scope sat atop the barrel, glass old yet sharp, the kind of relic no one in the Federation would have thought worth keeping. The others had laughed when they first saw it. Velthur had chittered mockingly, asking, "Does it fling stones? Shall we gather pebbles to keep him stocked?" The Dracari's tail had swished as it barked a gravelly laugh. That antique will crack apart before it kills a single foe. Perhaps it is just for display. Even the Vetran twins, normally restrained, had pulsed in a rhythmic resonance of amusement. The human hadn't answered. He had simply checked the chamber, cleaned the scope's frost with a cloth, and remained silent. His hair was iron gray, his face worn with the deep lines of years long survived. There was no gleam of vanity in his eyes, only a calm intensity that made his silence louder than their jeers. Velthur pressed harder during the march. Why bring a relic into a modern war? What is iron and powder against shields and plasma? The human had finally spoken then, his tone quiet enough to force them to lean closer. It does the same thing your toys do. Puts bodies in the ground. The recruits had burst into laughter, the cold air filling with harsh sounds that echoed mockingly through the trees. Only Captain Rin had not joined. His mandibles had tightened, and his compound eyes had fixed briefly on the old man. Enough, he had snapped. Mock him later if you wish. For now, stay focused. Now the squad reached a clearing where fog swirled like smoke drawn from unseen fires. The alien recruits adjusted their visors, cycling through spectrums, but the mist swallowed every wavelength. Their scanners returned only static. Somewhere out there, Dominion soldiers waited, armed with their own blazing arsenals, moving silently through the haze. The crystalline twins shifted uneasily, their pulsing tones low. The Dracari's claws tightened around its rifle, impatience trembling through its muscular frame. Velthur's antennae quivered with restless energy. The human said nothing. He lowered himself by a fallen trunk, laying his rifle across it with practiced care. Each movement was precise, unhurried. He adjusted the scope, pulled the hood of his ghillie suit tighter, then melted into the snow and brush until the squad almost lost sight of him entirely. Velthur's voice rose in contempt. He hides before the battle even begins. Fear suits him. Captain Rin ignored the remark. His senses pricked with unease. Something moved in the mist. The first plasma bolts lit the fog, neon green streaks searing through the white air. Trees exploded in showers of sparks, their bark igniting before hissing back into steam. The recruits scrambled, firing blindly into the shadows. The forest became a storm of sound and light. Energy bolts hissing past, bark shattering into shards. Their rifles shrieked with every blast, their fear hidden beneath noise. But none of their shots struck true. Then another sound split the chaos. Alien, simple, brutal. A sharp crack, as though the sky itself had snapped in two. One Dominion soldier fell instantly, his helmet shattered. Another crack followed, and another soldier collapsed, blood blooming into the snow. The squad froze in astonishment. They turned, scanning desperately for the source, but saw only fog. Realization struck with a chill sharper than the cold. It was him, the old human. Another shot rang out. A third Dominion soldier dropped mid-step, lifeless before he hit the ground. Panic rippled through the enemy lines. They fired wildly, but the mist betrayed them, hiding the sniper's position. Velthur's antennae drooped. The Dracary's tail stilled. Even the crystalline twins pulsed with uneasy awe. Captain Rin's voice cut through the comms, steady and sharp. Hold formation. Keep their attention. Let 'em work. The recruits obeyed, though their pride faltered with every crack of the rifle. Where they had mocked, they now stared in silence. Each bullet carried weight. Each bullet reshaped the battle. Enemy soldiers shouted frantically, their formation crumbling. One tried to flank the squad, slipping through the haze with blade drawn. Velthur shrieked, raising its rifle too late. A single crack sounded, and the attacker dropped lifeless at Velthur's feet. The insectoid froze, staring down at the body, mandibles trembling. The human spoke through the comms, his voice calm, measured, and utterly detached. Keep your eyes forward. They'll try again. The squad no longer laughed. They no longer scoffed. The fog pressed around them, filled with unseen shapes and invisible threats. Yet with each crack of the rifle, the world grew quieter, safer. The forest shifted. The Dominion's advance faltered. Where the recruit's plasma had achieved nothing, the old weapon had sown terror. The recruits huddled closer to their cover, eyes darting toward the mist. But their thoughts no longer lingered on the enemy alone. They kept thinking of the man hidden somewhere among the snow, the relic they had dismissed, the ghost that spoke softly and killed without hesitation. The battle was far from over, but already something fundamental had changed. What they had mocked was no relic. It was the hunter in the fog, and it was hunting for them. The forest became a storm of fire. Plasma bolts tore through the fog, melting frost from branches and leaving glowing scars on the bark. The recruits fired blindly, trying to carve shapes from the mist. Their weapons shrieked with every burst, a high-pitched whine that echoed far louder than their courage. For every dozen shots unleashed, not a single enemy fell. But the human's rifle cracked once, and a Dominion soldier collapsed. Another crack, another body. The rhythm of death was steady, like the ticking of an unseen clock. The recruits began to feel the difference. Their weapons filled the air with noise, but his filled it with consequence. Every squeeze of his trigger meant a life ended. His fire was not volume, but certainty, a cold arithmetic measured in heartbeats and fallen foes. Velthur clicked furiously, mandibles scraping. Where is he? Where does he hide? Captain Rin answered without looking back. Exactly where he should be. You cannot see him, and neither can they. The Dracary snarled, firing into shadows where it thought it glimpsed movement. The bolts vanished into the fog. Then what are we to do? Stand here while he alone fights the war. Another shot rang out, and a Dominion advance unit pitched forward into the snow. The human's voice, calm and even, drifted into the comms for the first time since the fight began. You're not here to spray light. You're here to survive. Keep their eyes forward, keep them distracted. Leave the rest to me. The words carried no arrogance, only fact. And yet they struck deeper than any order. The recruits felt the weight of command in them, the certainty of one who had seen battle far longer than their collective years. The Dominion pushed harder. Figures emerged in the fog, armored brutes wielding plasma axes, charging with guttural war cries. The recruits flinched, unready for such raw ferocity. The Drakari bellowed, raising its rifle, but the charging enemy was faster. Then came the crack. The brute's head snapped back in a crimson mist, body crumpling mid-stride. The Drakari froze, staring at its savior unseen. The Velthur muttered, voice low now. He hunts them like prey. The veterans resonated with agreement, their crystalline tones subdued. Every bolt we fire is wasted in fog. Every bullet he fires finds a heart. Captain Rin barked again. Hold formation. You are cover, nothing more. Let him cut them down. The squad obeyed reluctantly, their pride shrinking with each passing shot. What they had mocked, now they only watched. The Dominion soldiers were growing desperate. They fired in wide arcs, hoping to flush out the hidden killer, but their shots went high, striking nothing. The mist betrayed them. Panic rippled through their lines as comrades fell one after another, unseen by the living ghost with the Thunder Voice rifle. The human shifted position unseen, crawling low, the ghillie suit swallowing his shape into the snow. His breath was slow, measured. Through the scope, the fog was no longer impenetrable. He saw movement, patterns, rhythms in the chaos. His finger tightened and released, each shot a whisper of finality. The recruits huddled behind trees, trying to match his composure. Their nerves frayed as enemy squads probed closer. One Dominion soldier slipped through the line, roaring as it swung its plasma blade toward Velthur. The insectoid shrieked and stumbled back. Another crack split the air. The soldier collapsed, blades sputtering out in the snow before it could land. Velthur stared down at the corpse, mandibles trembling. He saved me. Not you, Rin corrected sharply. The unit. He saved the unit. Learn the difference. Still, Velthur's eyes flicked to the mist where the sound had come from, and for the first time, it felt something akin to respect. The Dominion pressed no less fiercely. Reinforcements poured from the fog, heavier troops, their armor reflecting the dim light of plasma fire. The recruits felt their courage faltering, but then the sniper shifted again. His shots slowed, deliberate, each aimed at the larger threats. One struck the joint of a mech's leg, sending the machine crashing sideways into the snow. Another pierced the visor of a commander, scattering the enemy's coordination. The battle began to tilt. The recruits could feel it, even if they did not understand it. The Dominion's numbers were greater, their technology superior, but with every thunderous crack of the rifle, their advance faltered. Confusion spread. Fear bloomed. The recruits realized that they were no longer the hunted. Something else had claimed that role. The Drakari leaned against a tree, chest heaving as it reloaded its spent rifle. This is madness. One man turning an army. Rin's voice was quiet, though the calm carried it to all. Not madness. Skill, patience, precision. Traits we too quickly forget in our hunger for brighter weapons. The veterans sang softly, their crystalline tones reverberating with awe. He fights as if war itself bends to him. Not to speed, not to firepower, but to will. The old human remained silent. He did not acknowledge their words, did not bask in awe. He simply worked, the rifle steady in his hands. Minutes stretched like hours. The fog thinned just enough to show the cost. Dominion bodies littered the snow, some fallen mid-step, others sprawled across roots and branches. The ground was painted with silence between each crack of the rifle. The recruits no longer mocked. They no longer questioned. Their eyes tracked the forest's edges, guarding his flanks as if instinct now commanded them. They fired less often, conserving energy, trusting his unseen hand to deliver the decisive blows. When the final Dominion soldier broke and ran, plasma rifle clattering from its claws, the recruits barely reacted. The battle's end had been inevitable long before. The silence that followed was heavy, pressing against them as frost pressed against bark. From a mist, the human rose. Slowly, Carefully, as if shedding the forest itself, he emerged from the snow. The ghillie suit hung like a cloak of ghosts, tattered and damp. He moved with no triumph, only calm. His rifle slid back across his shoulder with practiced ease. The recruits stared. None spoke. At last, Velthur broke the silence, mandibles quivering. You fight like nothing I've seen. You kill without hesitation, without light, without fury. Only silence. The human met its compound eyes, voice flat. Killing isn't noise. It's patience. Noise gets you killed. The words settled heavier than plasma fire. The recruits absorbed them, their pride cut raw. Yet in that wound, something else stirred. Something like respect, something dangerously close to fear. Captain Rin gave the order to regroup. The squad began moving, their steps less confident than before, their gazes always flicking back to the gray-haired figure who trailed behind them, silent as shadow. The battle was won, but the war stretched further into the mist. And though the recruits no longer laughed, a question gnawed at them. How many more cracks of thunder would it take before they understood the full measure of the relic walking at their side? The snow muffled their steps as the squad pressed deeper into the forest. Silence lay heavy across the battlefield now, broken only by the faint hiss of cooling plasma burns and the occasional groan of the wounded Dominion left behind. The recruits followed Captain Rin, but their eyes kept drifting to the human who trailed at the rear. He moved like a shadow that had grown weary of being unseen, every gesture deliberate, every breath measured. The rifle rested across his back, but its presence felt more oppressive than the drawn weapons of the others. Velthur dared to break the silence first. Its mandibles clacked nervously, words forming with effort. That weapon, it does not miss. The human didn't slow. It misses when the finger rushes. It misses when the eye lies. It misses when the shooter forgets he is the hunter, not the prey. The Drakari gave a scoff, though the edge in its voice had dulled since the battle. You speak as though killing is philosophy. The man glanced at him, pale eyes calm and steady. Killing is survival. The philosophy is in how long you plan to keep doing it. The words lingered. None spoke for some time after. Even Rin seemed unwilling to cut through the weight of them. When the next skirmish came, it was sudden. A squad of Dominion scouts burst from the fog, swift and coordinated, plasma rifles firing in tight volleys. The recruits panicked, scattering for cover. Bolts tore into trees, spraying splinters and steam. Velthur shrieked as one shot clipped its shoulder, the smell of scorched chitin rising. Before panic could bloom into disaster, the rifle cracked once. The lead scout fell. Another crack, a second dropped. The rest hesitated, and in that hesitation the squad found its courage. Rin barked orders, the veterans' crystalline voices rang as they fired in concert, and the Drakari leapt forward to finish a straggler with a burst of plasma fire. When the last scout fell, the squad regrouped, shaken but alive. Velthur flexed its wounded arm, antennae trembling. We would have broken without him, it admitted, voice soft. Rin's mandibles twitched, his compound eyes narrowing. Then learn. Watch him. Study him. He will not always be here. The human had already moved to higher ground, crawling up a snow-covered ridge. His eyes scanned the distance through the scope. The fog was thinning now, revealing stretches of white forest beyond. Smoke rose faintly in the far distance. He adjusted the rifle, tracking the horizon with a hunter's patience. The recruits followed his gaze, unease prickling at them. Dominion reinforcements were gathering. Heavy shapes moved in the mist. Armored walkers, their legs pounding the ground like drums, flanked by troops in disciplined ranks. Their weapons glowed hotter than the plasma rifles the recruits carried, miniature suns waiting to be unleashed. The squad murmured, fear edging their voices. The Drakari hissed, "We cannot stand against that. Even he cannot strike them all." The human's voice carried quietly over the comms, each word unhurried. Machines break. Soldiers panic. Leaders bleed. You don't fight the whole army. You fight the part that makes it stumble. He drew a long breath, then exhaled, settling into the snow as if the earth itself had accepted him. Through his scope, he found the walker's joints, the glowing seam of its power core, the vulnerable optics of its pilot. His finger squeezed. The rifle cracked. The walker staggered as a joint exploded, its massive body lurching sideways. Soldiers nearby shouted in alarm, scattering to avoid being crushed. Another shot rang out, and the pilot's visor shattered. The machine fell silent, smoke rising from its collapsed frame. The recruits stared in disbelief. One bullet, two targets undone. The impossible made routine. Velther whispered, almost reverent. He dismantles war with patience. The veterans resonated in agreement, their crystalline tones humming low. This is not technology. This is art. But the Dominion did not falter long. Their reinforcements pressed harder, drones buzzing overhead like swarms of angry insects. Beams of plasma cut through trees, igniting bark into showers of sparks. The squad huddled close to the ground, fear tightening around them once more. The sniper adjusted again. His shots slowed, but each was deliberate, purposeful. A drone spiraled from the sky, another shot through its core. A Dominion officer raised a banner to rally the troops, only for the cloth to fall with its bearer a heartbeat later. The recruits could feel the tide shifting again, not from their efforts, but from his unseen hand guiding the battlefield. And yet, even as awe grew, so too did unease. The human's calm was unshakable, his detachment chilling. He spoke only when necessary, never raising his voice, never showing strain. To the recruits, it was as though death itself had taken form and chosen to walk beside them. The Drakari voiced what the others would not. You kill as if it costs you nothing. Does it weigh nothing, then? For the first time, the human paused before answering. His eyes stayed on the scope, but his voice was heavier. It costs everything. Every time. The trick is learning to carry it so it doesn't break you before the war does. The words sank deep, colder than the frost around them. The recruits felt the edges of his truth, a burden carried in silence, one they had never imagined when they laughed at his rifle. The battle raged on. More Dominion troops fell, their formation unraveling under invisible fire. The recruits began to adapt, firing with more patience, conserving their energy, covering angles instead of wasting shots. They were learning, not from drills or commanders, but from the ghost crouched in the snow beside them. When the last walker collapsed and the enemy retreated into the fog, the forest fell silent again. The recruits stood among the wreckage, their breaths visible in the frozen air, their weapons cooling in their hands. The human rose, brushing snow from his cloak, and slung the rifle over his shoulder. He did not speak of victory. He did not smile. He simply moved forward, as though the war stretched endlessly ahead, and this battle was but another step along it. The squad followed. None dared mock. None dared question. They walked in silence. Every one of them changed, though they did not yet know into what. Captain Rin trailed behind, his compound eyes fixed on the old sniper's back. He saw not just skill, not just survival, but a reminder of something the galaxy had forgotten. Wars had grown brighter, louder, more adorned with spectacle. Yet here was proof that the simplest truths still ruled the battlefield. Patience, precision, and the will to outlast. The fog swallowed them once more, but the echoes of the rifle remained, etched into the recruits' thoughts. They would never hear silence the same way again. The battlefield stank of ozone and blood. Smoke clung to the skeletal trees, their blackened trunks glowing faintly where plasma had carved scars through bark. Snow melted into dirty slush where bodies lay sprawled, Dominion and Federation alike, their stillness a grim reminder of the price already paid. The recruits stood among the wreckage, shoulders hunched, faces drawn. They were alive, though none could say why with confidence. Their eyes kept returning to the gray-haired figure who moved among the fallen with unhurried calm. The human said nothing as he worked. He checked his rifle first, wiping grime from its length, ensuring the chamber was clean, the scope clear. Then he turned to the wounded. Without ceremony, he pressed cloth to burns, tightened makeshift bandages, and set bones with the same quiet efficiency he brought to killing. The recruits watched, unsettled. They had expected the weapon to define him. Instead, it was the steadiness, the refusal to falter whether ending life or preserving it. Velthur finally found its voice. Its mandibles clicked with hesitation. Why do you fight with us? You are older than all of us. Your ways are older still. What keeps you here? The human did not look up from where he bound around. Because wars never stop. You think each one is the last until the next begins. So long as wars keep coming, there must be those willing to end them. That's all. The veterans pulsed softly, their crystalline voices low. But why with relics? With iron and powder, when energy and plasma shine brighter. He tightened the bandage and finally raised his gaze, pale eyes steady. Because bright things draw attention. Loud things get noticed. I don't need to be bright. I only need to be unseen, until it's too late for the enemy to run. The squad fell silent. There was no bravado left, no mockery. Only the heavy truth of his words, the kind that stripped away illusions. The silence didn't last. A warning came from Rin, his mandibles twitching in alarm. Through the thinning fog, shapes advanced again. The Dominion had not broken entirely. A final wave pushed through the forest, desperate and brutal. Armored soldiers marched in tight ranks, their weapons blazing arcs of plasma that lit the haze in violent green. At their center strode a commander larger than the rest, clad in reinforced armor, its shoulders bristling with mounted cannons. The recruits tensed, fear clawing at their nerves. Velthur raised its weapon, but hesitated. The Drakari muttered a curse, its tail lashing wildly. Even the veterans' crystalline tones wavered. They had seen what the sniper could do, but this was different. This was not scattered soldiers or wandering mechs. This was discipline and rage given form. The human knelt, rifle sliding into his hands with a familiarity that made the motion almost tender. He crawled forward, cloak blending into the snow. The recruits closed ranks around him, no longer mocking his pace, but guarding it, instinctively aware that their survival hinged on his sight. Through the scope, the world narrowed to the enemy commander. The lenses magnified the beast's stride, its cannons spitting fire, its voice roaring commands. Around it, Dominion soldiers rallied, emboldened by its presence. The battle's weight centered there in that towering figure. The human slowed his breath. His finger rested on the trigger, not yet pulling, waiting for the heartbeat between movements. Plasma fire rained across the squad's cover. Bark exploded in showers of sparks. Snow boiled into steam. The Drakari roared in defiance, firing wildly. Velthur tried to match, mandibles clenched in desperation. The veterans resonated with panic, their bodies humming like struck bells. Rin shouted orders, but fear had already uncoiled in the squad. Then the cracks split the chaos. The commander staggered as its shoulder plate shattered. The cannons atop, it fell silent. Confusion rippled through its soldiers. Another crack followed, piercing the visor. The massive figure stumbled, collapsing to its knees. A third shot ended it, the body crashing into the snow with a thunder that silenced the forest more than plasma ever could. The recruits froze, stunned. The Dominion troops faltered. Their cohesion dissolved in an instant, shouts of anger turning into cries of fear. The old sniper fired again, each shot striking another officer, another rallying point. What had been an advance became a rout. Soldiers dropped weapons, fled into the fog, abandoned the fight entirely. Silence returned, thicker than before. Smoke drifted across the field where the Dominion had stood moments earlier. The recruits lowered their weapons, hands trembling with adrenaline. None dared speak first. It was Velthur who finally whispered, "You ended them, not us. Just you." The human shook his head, standing slowly, brushing snow from his cloak. "Not just me. You lived long enough for me to act. That's what matters." The Drakari's voice rumbled with unease. "We mocked you, called you relic. Yet you—" Its words trailed off, swallowed by a growl of frustration. It couldn't form the shape of what it meant. The veterans finished it for them, their tones clear. "Yet you saved us. The sniper only adjusted the strap on his rifle. His gaze lingered on the horizon, where fog still curled between trees, hiding wars yet to come. I didn't save you. I did my job. If you learned, then maybe you save yourselves next time. Rin stepped forward, compound eyes gleaming faintly. And if there is no next time? The old man gave the faintest shrug. Then you die, same as everyone who forgets what waits in a mist. There was no cruelty in the words, only a tired truth. The squad absorbed it, the weight of survival pressing against their chests. They had entered this forest believing themselves superior, laughing at the relic among them. They walked out knowing they were alive because of him. The march resumed, the forest reclaiming its silence. The recruits followed without complaint, their pride burned away, replaced with something colder and sharper. Respect, fear, perhaps even reverence. Velthur murmured softly, almost to itself. He kills like a ghost, walks like a shadow, yet stands like a man. The human said nothing. He simply kept walking, the rifle across his back, leaving only footprints in the snow. Later, when the story spread across ships and stations, it would grow with each telling. The recruits would speak of the old human sniper who turned laughter into silence, who hunted armies with iron and patience, who reminded the galaxy that bright weapons and shining armor were nothing against the will of one who refused to be seen until the kill was certain. Some would call him legend, others myth. But the recruits would remember the truth, that he was only a man, older than them all, burdened but unbroken. And in that truth, they would never laugh again.